Good morning, friends and enemies. Today, we are diving back into another Superflex rookie mock draft, okay? This one's going to be based on a 7-rounder done by the great people over at CBS. Don't know anyone at CBS, just going to assume they're great people because it's a great day. It's a big day, all right? And this one's going to be a solo mock draft. I'm going to run through the 4 rounds of the rookie draft based on the landing spots as we always do. I will throw them up on the screen so we can digest what happened in the NFL mock draft together and then make the rookie draft picks again. Next week, we will be going back to allowing Discord members into the draft. We will do a live draft with real people, all right? So if you're not in the Discord, go join that down below. There is a Big Dog chat in there specifically reserved for those y'all that are Big Dog members. You can go sign up on BDGE.co if you want to be in next week's rookie mock draft. Let's dive in. So we've got the draft board up, and you can see the draft picks that were made in the mock draft. Now, after round 4, what I typically do is I take all the skill players from the mock draft and throw them into this little sheet for you guys. I will say after round 4, I did not include everybody. I just included the notable players, right? So there's some like tight ends, some blocking tight ends, some quarterbacks that went in like the 7th round that you've never heard of that I don't think are going to be relevant. So we kept them out, which is why 5, 6, 7 were a little bit condensed here. But there's enough players here to run the entire, 4-round mock draft. Nothing too crazy here. We did see Jeanty go to Jacksonville 5th overall, which I don't think we've seen in a mock draft before. Matthew Golden going to Arizona, which was a first. Tyler Warren going to the Chargers at 13 is pretty sexy. Omarion Hampton drops to 2nd. He goes to New York. That's the first time I think I've seen them take a running back early. Otherwise, you have a lot of the same players going in around the same draft capital spots. We do have Bashaw Tutin going 55th overall to Miami, which is probably one of the more sus picks in this draft. Like that doesn't really make sense to me. I get that he kind of fits the scheme, but it was almost like when Seattle drafted Zach Charbonnet the year after drafting Kenneth Walker in the 2nd round. Just feels weird and a little bit redundant here. We do have Cam Scatabo going in the 3rd to the Chargers. I would say the most like non-consensus thing that happened in this mock draft would definitely be Caleb Johnson down there. Caleb Johnson, for the most part, has been mocked in the 2nd round in almost every mock draft that we've, kind of messed around with. And here he's dropped to the 4th round. So you're talking about a day 3 pick, Caleb Johnson. He does go to Dallas, so it's still a really interesting landing spot. But for him to drop to round 4 would kind of drop him out of that tier of, all those guys that do go in the 2nd round. You have the Gentys, and then you have the Hamptons, Judkins, Henderson, which he's kind of been thrown into that group of players. But if he's going to drop to day 3, it's not like he's off my board, but does get a little bit more sus. Like him going below DJ Giddens, a little too spicy for reality here. That being said, we're going to start this mock draft off. Genty's going to be the one going 5th overall to Jacksonville. They do have a crowded backfield. ETN, they picked up his 5th-year option, so he's going to play out 2025, obviously, in Jacksonville. You have Tank Bigsby, who kind of came on last year. Clearly going to be some sort of a committee there, but, you take a running back 5th overall, he's your workhorse right out of the gate. And they're trying to take pressure off of Trevor Lawrence, obviously. Next pick, this will be Mr. Cam Ward. He goes 1st overall to Tennessee, so we're not going to overthink that one. Next up, we're going to take Tet McMillan, who goes 6th overall to the Raiders. I think, again, you take a receiver 6th overall, and I think your immediate thought or your immediate output is like he's, 130, 140, 150 target guy. He's our one. He's our alpha. He's the one that we game plan to, all right? And that's kind of where he just lines in right away, and you got Geno going over there, so you like the quarterback situation a lot more than you did last year. Number 4, listen, I'm gonna start to probably die on this hill, and it's a little bit against consensus right now, but I think we're gonna see more and more steam go towards Travis Hunter. He goes 2nd overall here to Cleveland, and the betting odds in the market have started to move that way, where Travis Hunter is expected to go 2nd overall behind Cam Ward to Cleveland, and I think that makes sense. I think he's just a blue chip prospect, where if you're a team at the top of the draft, you're like, get a player that is going to be a really good player for your franchise for a while. And the reason I like the landing spot for Cleveland, and the reason I'm taking him at the 104 here, is we all know how good of a separator and receiver he is. But we've had Andrew Berry, the GM of Cleveland, come out multiple times this offseason and say they view Travis Hunter as a receiver first. And I think that also makes sense given their personnel. I think it makes sense given their cornerback and wide receiver personnel. Like, they need wide receivers. They also have good cornerbacks between Denzel Ward and Emerson and Greg Newsome. Like, they have a good group of cornerbacks over there, a good defense already. Travis Hunter has also been really fucking vocal about wanting to play both ways. So maybe he's just a special talent that, passes by all of the people that say he can't do what they're saying he can't do, and play both ways. So Hunter's been doing it his entire college career. They view him as a wide receiver first, and if he is playing the majority of snaps at wide receiver, then he's going to be a fantasy dynamite stick, all right? And you might ask you, like, why, if you feel that way, why not have Hunter over McMillan? I just think, like, again, if they're both top 6 guys and we're deciding between the two, yeah, the tiebreaker is going to be like, what if Travis Hunter does not play the full slate of snaps at wide receiver? So I'm going to go Hunter there. I don't care if you disagree. 5th overall, we're going to go with Tyler Warren here. Love him as a tight end prospect. He's the one in this class for me. He goes to the Chargers. Just a beautiful landing spot there. My next pick, we're going to dip into the second round. This is where I'm going to start to pepper the running backs here. Amari Hampton goes 34th overall to the New York Giants. And yeah, Tyrone Tracy had a nice little breakout year last year, but he couldn't really hold on to the ball. He is a day 3 pick with not a ton of experience at the running back position. Again, you draft a dude like Amari Hampton, 34th overall. He's going to be your starter pretty much out of the gate. And this is a spot, like 34th overall is really where a lot of like workhorse running backs end up being drafted. If you think about the history over the last like 5-10 years, this is around, give or take like 5 spots where Breece Hall went, where Jonathan Taylor went, where Nick Chubb went. Like, this is a really good pocket for getting elite running backs. And I think Hampton kind of fits that bill, as does Quinshawn Judkins, who I like the landing spot a lot more for Judkins. He goes 39th overall to Chicago, and he'll step in likely as their starter, again, in that spot where you're probably primed to be the future of that backfield. After that, we're going to go back to Shedeur Sanders. He gets picked 7th overall to New York. New York is obviously just a fucking travesty when it comes to drafting quarterbacks and just developing players and all that stuff. There's, pieces on offense that are fun, exciting, building the O-line, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, all that kind of stuff. But I do think there's enough risk where most NFL draft pundits are kind of labeling Sanders as a prospect the tier below Cam Ward, plus the landing spot in New York is just not the GOAT. At 9, we're going to go back to the tight end position, Colston Loveland. He is, for me, it's here below Warren, but the landing spot in Denver is it's fucking precious, man. That's a great spot to be with Sean Payton, who they did just grab Evan Ingram. I really don't think that means that they're not going to take a tight end in this draft. Even, in the first round here. I think Ingram's relatively old. I think you could definitely use, if you have Loveland and Ingram, like, that's a really, really sexy duo in the 12 personnel to use 2 tight ends, on 50-60% of the snaps. Now you go from having like one good wide receiver to a good but aging tight end to having 3 legitimate weapons on the field at the same time between Sutton, Loveland, Ingram. So I definitely don't think that means that they're not going to draft a tight end here. He goes 20th overall. The Ingram signing doesn't overly concern me there. At the 10 spot, we're going to grab Emeka Egbuka, Ohio State wide receiver. He goes 23rd overall to the Green Bay Packers. They're clearly looking for a 1 there. Jaden Reed, Christian Watson towards ACL. Dontavian Wicks can't catch the ball, all that good stuff. So love the landing spot. And you guys know I really, really like Matthew Golden, but I actually like the landing spot for Egbuka more than I like Golden here. He goes to Arizona, 16th overall, so he gets drafted above Egbuka in the NFL mock draft. However, I don't know. That to me, that kind of caps his ceiling. You go to Arizona where they just took Marvin Harrison Jr. last year as a top 5 pick, and he's clearly, going to be the one for the foreseeable future there. So I just don't know what kind of upside you're going to have from a second wide receiver in that Arizona offense, especially with Trey McBride there too, suctioning up 120, 30 targets a year. So the fantasy spot, not a great landing spot for Golden. So he drops to the 111. To round out the first round, we will take Mr. Travion Henderson. He goes to the Broncos. So really good landing spot there, 51st overall. So right outside, the top 50 draft picks, but he'll have every opportunity to take over the backfield and be the guy there for Sean Payton in Denver. So if you wanted to take him even earlier, I don't think I'd really have a problem with it. We'll move into the second round, and I will grab Jackson Dart. He goes 33rd overall. So the first pick of the second round to Cleveland. You got Cleveland pairing Jackson Dart with Mr. Travis Hunter. Now Deshaun Watson re-tours Achilles. So they need a quarterback here, all right? And if a rookie quarterback gets onto the field, their value is going to spike up. People like Jackson Dart. Cleveland obviously likes Jackson Dart. If they take him here, I think he'll have a chance to play immediately, if not just in his rookie year at some point. And I'll take shots at quarterback in the second round for sure. At the 2-2, we're going to take Luther Burden III. He goes to the Saints, 40th overall. So a nice little pair with Chris Olave over there. Obviously an uninspiring offense, but Burden's a good player. He's a playmaker, and they need something outside of Olave there. So decent landing spot. At the 2-3, we actually have just a rip of wide receivers here that I'm just going to throw them on the board for you, and we'll kind of talk about their order a little bit. So after Luther Burden at the 2-2, we have Trey Harris at the 2-3, Jaden Higgins at the 2-4, and Jalen Noel at the 2-5. So we've got Trey Harris, the Ole Miss wide receiver. He goes to Dallas, 44th overall. So love the landing spot. You're going to go into a spot where you could probably play the wide receiver 2 role immediately outside of CeeDee Lamb, and you've got Dak Prescott. So, that is a perfect landing spot with a ton of upside for Trey Harris right out the rip. You have Jaden Higgins, who goes 50th overall to Seattle. We've talked about this landing spot. He's a pure outside wide receiver, so I think that makes a ton of sense with Cooper Kupp and JSN, 217, a guy that's 6'4", a guy that runs a 4.47, got the athleticism, got the size, got the outside playmaking ability to pair really well in that offense. And then you have his teammate. So you got back-to-back Iowa State wide receivers. Jalen Noel goes to the Jets, 42nd overall. So you have these 4 wide receivers that are picked within 10 spots in the NFL draft. And to me, it's a balance of talent. It's a balance of landing spot. It's a balance of you want to shoot for upside, you want to shoot for floor. With Jalen Noel, I think he's a really good wide receiver. I think he's a very good separator. I think he's a great route runner. He's super versatile. I mean, his game is kind of similar to Garrett Wilson. I wouldn't say he's got the spectacular catch ability of Garrett Wilson, and Noel is far more a slot wide receiver than he is an outside wide receiver, but I think he's a really good spark plug for that Jets offense. I just think, what is the Jets offense? And that's kind of the problem here. They drafted Shedeur Sanders, so I like the quarterback wide receiver pairing, but I think I like Higgins a little bit more going to Seattle, where know exactly what his fit's going to be. After those 4 second-round receivers, we're going to dip back into the running back pool where we took Cam Scatabo and then Caleb Johnson. So Scatabo goes 3rd round to the Chargers, and that backfield is completely wide open. I love this landing spot, and again, if you wanted to draft him higher, I really don't have a problem with that either. If you wanted to draft him at the 2-4 instead of Higgins and move those 2 back, cool with that. Scatabo is a 3-down back. He's obviously not super explosive, but I think they're just looking for a really hard-nosed runner that can carry the ball on all 3 downs and not fuck things up, and I think that's perfect for Scatabo, and the landing spot's obviously incredible there in LA with day 2 capital. Caleb Johnson, again, falls down the board a little bit. He's the 4th rounder, 113th overall, but going to Dallas, if he's as good as I think he is, if he's as good as people think he is, he should have no problem jumping that depth chart quickly, right? They signed Javonte Williams, they signed Miles Sanders, so there are players there that have had, glimpses at the NFL level, but I think Caleb Johnson could easily surpass that and be, the day 3 steal of the draft. After Caleb Johnson, we do have another little run of wide receivers. We got Jack Besh, 2nd rounder, goes to the Rams. I've talked about Jack Besh before going to the Rams, which I think is a really, really good fit as a big physical playmaker after the catch, ability to play inside, outside, really strong hands, 6'1", 215, built like most of the receivers that they've had on their team in previous years. Besh just fits what McVay kind of stands for at the receiver position. So I think it's a good pick, and use 2nd-round capital on him. I mean, that's pretty telling in my opinion. So we got Besh. After that, we got Jalen Royals, goes to Kansas City. Jalen Royals is another dude, good size, 6'1", 205, can run routes down the field, can be a separator down the field. Going to KC, they have Rashee Rice coming back from the serious injury, maybe suspension pending. They re-signed Hollywood, they got Worthy, but I don't know. They need another, in my opinion, possession receiver, not like a speedster or a trickster guy. So I like the Jalen Royals fit here a lot. And then I really like Kyle Williams, too. The Patriots have kind of taken shots at all these young wide receivers over the last few years, and Kyle Williams is a dude who can fly down the field. Kyle Williams kind of reminds me of Jalen Noel a little bit, where I think he can play inside, outside, going to be a good slot wide receiver, really wiry, really explosive if you get the ball in his hands, and I think he could crack the lineup pretty soon in New England. At the 211, we will dip back to the tight end position. You take the sure-handed Mason Taylor out of LSU. He goes to Indy. Not a ton of pass-catching upside with all the weapons there and the quarterback uncertainty, but, he's a top 45 pick. We won't let him slide too far down. At the 212, we're going to take Jalen Milroe here. Again, super flex league. You're not going to let these guys fall too much further down the draft board. The Giants don't take a quarterback in this one 3rd overall. So they've got Russ, they've got Jameis, and clearly those two are not the future. So maybe you let Jalen Milroe develop for a year or two behind those two and then give him a crack at the starting lineup. And obviously, with his rushing ability, he could have insane fantasy upside. For the 3rd and 4th round, I'm going to go ahead and fill these out, and then we'll talk about the players. So at the 3-1, we took Bashaw Tootin. Again, this is kind of a weird draft spot. He goes in the 2nd round, 55th overall to Miami, but they obviously have Achane. they drafted Jalen Wright last year. Raheem Mostert is not on the team anymore, so I guess there's like room. Like maybe the only way this makes sense to me is if they have kind of decided that Jalen Wright is just not the guy for them, that Jalen Wright is not serviceable enough to be the backup or the secondary player behind Achane. He's not going to be able to take that Raheem Mostert role, and they say Tutin's a perfect fit, which he is, right? 4'3", 240. Like, he does fit exactly what they want to do in that backfield. But they would have to think that Tutin is a better prospect than Wright, and Wright's not their guy there. Weird situation, weird fit based on their personnel, I think. But, yeah, I mean, second rounder, honestly, probably shouldn't even let him fall this far, but I just think it's just such a weird spot that, like, I'm not overly excited about the landing spot despite the draft capital. After that, we got Alec Ayumaner. He goes to Houston. This has been like a super popular pairing between him and the Texans. He's a bigger receiver, kind of like a boundary player. You know, they badly need another outside wide receiver outside of Nico. They got Christian Kirk coming over. He'll play the slot most likely, but, you know, Ayumaner can have some rookie snaps out the gate, and being tied to C.J. Stroud is always a good thing, of course. Next up, we got Dylan Sampson. He goes 4th round to the Raiders. So day 3 capital, you don't love to see that. However, you know, Sampson, like when I think of day 3 over the last couple of years, you do think of Tyrone Tracy, you do think of Bucky Irving. Like, I think he fits that mold where he's a much better inside runner than given credit for, super explosive. He's going to a backfield that is completely wide open in Las Vegas there, because in the first round, they didn't get Ashton Jeanty, right? They ended up missing him because he went 1 pick before. Then you go Tet McMillan. So the backfield last year was Madison and Zamir White and Sincere McCormick and Amir. Like, it was a shit show. So I think Dylan Sampson honestly gets drafted, and he is the best backfield player immediately there. Does it lead to opportunity? I don't know, but I wouldn't let him fall much further if he goes to LV here. After that, at the 3-4, we've got Isaiah Bond. He goes to Cleveland in the 3rd round. Spot where I don't really know what his role is going to be there because they have the weapons, especially with drafting Travis Hunter there, right? They got Judy, they got Cedric Tillman. I think they still have Elijah Moore. They got David Njoku. Their quarterback situation is a little bit up in flux, so I think Bonds, I get it, like for a depth piece for them, but I don't see a ton of fantasy upside here. Took Harold Fannin at the 3-5. I like the landing spot in L.A. Tyler Higbee, I believe, will be back for 1 year, but after that, it could be Fannin's job. Next up, we got DJ Giddens, who went 3rd round, so day 2 capital, pretty damn good. Goes to the Saints. Kamara is still there. Kendre Miller is still there, but I would imagine if they take a 3rd round back, that Giddens probably ends up taking the job from Kendre Miller. Giddens, you know, he's a bigger back. He has the size to be a 3-down workhorse, and I think he played that way at Kansas State. I don't think he has a ton of upside, though. I think he's just a guy that's more of like a sum of his parts back that does everything decently well, but I don't really see him being a huge upside guy at the next level by any means. Jaden Blue is a 3-7 here. He goes to the Chiefs, end of the 4th round, so not good draft capital, but Jaden Blue is a pure pass-catching back, right? And if Casey doesn't draft another back and they just run out with Pacheco and Kareem Hunt again next year, Jaden Blue's role, I think, could be really interesting. Like, think about what Jerick McKinnon did a few years ago where he had, like, I think 8 receiving touchdowns or something like that. Blue can come in and be, like, a really, really nice PPR play for you in Kansas City if this is his landing spot. The 3-8, this was supposed to be Jalen Lane, but Sleeper does not have Jalen Lane in their database. He goes in the 3rd round to Philly. You got Tony Horton going at the 3-9, he goes 98th overall to Tennessee. And then you got Tez Johnson, who goes 72nd overall to Chicago. Lane and Horton are both like really athletic players that I think could have some upside in their offenses. So I took them over Tez Johnson, who I'm not a huge fan of. I also don't know what kind of role he's going to have in that Chicago offense. Maybe it's just Roman DJ Moore on the outside and they let Tez play the slot role, which would be interesting because he was more of a manufactured touch guy at Oregon. So I think that could make sense there for him. But overall, don't see a ton of upside for him. RJ Harvey went 3-11. He goes to New England in the 5th round. So unserious draft capital. They did extend Ramondre Stevenson. Antonio Gibson is still there. So I don't see a huge path to playing time. This kind of reminds me of like what would Pierre Strong be in New England, and we saw how that experiment worked out. Ty Felton at the 3-12. He was the last of the 3rd round wide receivers left. He goes to Baltimore, so not a great landing spot, but decent draft capital. And then give me a sec, and I will fill out the 4th round. All right, so at the 4-1, we took Elijah Arroyo. He goes in the 4th round to New England. They still have Hunter Henry. I believe they still have Austin Hooper, but they do need a tight end of the future. So Arroyo, to be honest with you, I kind of forgot to draft him, but I think if I went back and did this again, he would be probably around the 3-7 to 3-8. So I'm kind of doing this in real time, so just hang on with me here. Elijah Roy goes there, but I'm going to move him up to around the 3.7, 3.8. At the 4.2, we took Deontay Thornton. Goes to Buffalo in the 4th round, and I kind of think it's a good pairing. He's a bigger player that has some real speed and can be an outside guy for them, so I don't hate that. After that, Andrew Armstrong, not in the sleeper database. He would have been the 4-3 here for me. He goes to Cincinnati in the 4th round, another dude with good athleticism, another dude. I've actually never really heard of him before I saw this mock draft, but I'm looking him up, and I'm like, he's an explosive playmaker that could fit well in that Cincinnati offense. So if you want to go check out Andrew Armstrong, do your own research. At the 4-4, we took Taj Brooks. Now, Taj Brooks goes in the 5th round to San Francisco, 160th overall, so unserious draft capital. Like the player, bigger guy, can catch the ball. There's some aspects to like about him, and the landing spot in San Fran's always intriguing, but it's certainly an uphill battle. After that, we've got Savion Williams. Y'all know him as kind of like the Walmart Cordarrelle Patterson, going to New England there at the end of the 5th round, so also unserious draft capital. Not expecting much upside there from him, especially not in year 1 or 2. At the 4-6, I took the wide receiver out of Florida, Elijah Badger. He goes to Carolina in the 4th round. However, he is not in the sleeper database, so you see Brashard Smith there. We got some back-to-back quarterbacks. Tyler Shuck goes in the 3rd round to Seattle. Then Will Howard of Ohio State goes in the 4th round to L.A. So 2 guys that could see themselves on the field in a year or 2, depending on the veteran that's playing above them, with Sam Darnold and Matt Stafford. But again, 3rd, 4th round with proven veteran guys. They're not going to touch the field until they are forced to touch the field. And after that, you've got some running backs y'all obviously know in Trevor Etienne, Devin Neal, and Jordan James. Unfortunately, Trevor Etienne goes to L.A. in the 6th round. So he's behind Cam Scatabo, 6th round draft capital. Devin Neal and Jordan James go to Carolina and Dallas, respectively. Both teams that have running backs and or have drafted running backs in this draft already, and 7th round draft capital is like incredibly uphill battle for you to really get on the field and have a fantasy impact this year off the rip. And then I ended the draft with Quinn Ewers, who ended up going in the 5th round to Indianapolis. And you know what? He's kind of got a path if everything fucking goes wrong with Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson, which will not be crazy, but I also think Quinn Ewers is worse than both of those quarterbacks. So whatever, we're not going to let him float on the free agent market there. All right, so that's our first 4-rounder of a rookie mock. Let me know what you guys think based on how the draft played out itself right there. Let me know what you would do differently, who you would target earlier, who you would target later. If there's anything that you disagree with, yell about it in the comments. I ain't actually trying to hear it. All right, I love y'all. I'll see you when I see you. Smooches.